There we go. I just realized my live stream's been going on for 3 minutes and I didn't even have my mic on. All right, well let's start this over. Welcome to Occam's Razor. This is Blazing Cat for Fridays, where we do a cold read through of the best news aggregate for people who think just like me. I'd like to thank BCF for posting these live streams and for his tireless commitment to publishing a site every day for going on 20 years. Close to 20 years, I believe. Did you know that he has a news feed? Yeah, I showed it earlier. Let's pop that in there. Yeah, for when you can't wait for his next thing. And if you please follow me on Rumble. Sorry about the first 3 minutes. I can't believe I didn't have my mic on. Let's go back up to the beginning. Okay, so we're on there. Today, a diversity crime. Shots fired at a Surrey cafe. Notorious Khalistani terrorist claims responsibility. Like I was saying, but nobody heard me. It's the wild, wild west out on the far left coast because we're importing far too many scientists and doctors into this country. And obviously, they just have to resort to a life of Duke Nukem on the streets. From the video that I saw, they was firing off a pistola from a car. Two pistolas, one pistol, I don't care. It doesn't really matter. Why is this happening in Canada? Ah, well, who let them in for the last 10 years? Just remember that Africa's four richest men, wealthier than half the continent combined. Africa's four richest people hold more wealth than half the continent's population combined. The charity Oxfam reported, warning that skewed policies are fueling deepening poverty and soaring fortunes for a few. Africa had no billionaires in 2000, but now it has 23 with an estimated shared wealth that has skyrocketed by 56% in the last 5 years, with the richest recording even bigger gains, Oxfam says. There's no industry in Africa. Where do you think they got all that money? One of three ways: crime or crime, and probably crime. Defense minister calls extremist plot charges disturbing, insists military culture is changing with added men's washrooms, tampon dispensers, and quicker access to sex organ mutilation surgery on tap. Okay. It's down my alley. Defense Minister David McGuinty called allegations that military members were part of an extremist plot disturbing, but pushed back against accusations the Canadian Armed Forces isn't doing enough to change its culture. Oh, you've done far more than enough to change the culture. And that's why people are fleeing. The minister briefly spoke to reporters Thursday on the sidelines of a change of command ceremony. They were his first public comments since the RCMP charged four men, including two CAF members and one former member, of amassing a trove of weapons and explosives as part of a scheme to take over land near Quebec City. It's deeply concerning. We reject completely this kind of behavior. These beliefs, this system, these activities, he said. So, and what does BCF say here? Who's the extremist? Canada. First trans military chaplain suspended for sexual misconduct. You don't say. Beatrice Gale, the first transgender chaplain in the Canadian Armed Forces and a member of the Royal Military College. Oh, yes, RMC, where souls go to die, has been suspended from service for sexual misconduct. Gale was born as a male but identifies as a female. The information was confirmed by True North, who spoke with sources from the Department of National Defense. According to the information, Gale allegedly made inappropriate comment to another individual. According to a source familiar with the matter, who spoke with True North, Gale asked to grope a lieutenant's buttocks. Grope a lieutenant's buttocks. Yes, everything is fine. Everything is fine. Don't worry, Canada. The Canadian Armed Forces only has a total effective strength of 40% and dropping. Don't worry. We don't have a military. It's only a matter of time before somebody else moves another military in for us because we don't have a military. 8,400 euro fine for 3 words. Germany's latest assault on free speech. Oh, I like this. Hello, mean tweets police. This is this from the Raiders of the Lost Ark? This looks like the guy from the Raiders of the Lost Ark. A man's house was raided and his phones were seized, all because of a tweet. A court in Germany town of Lindau has imposed an $8,400 euro fine on a man for tweeting three words on X: Alles für Deutschland, all for Germany. The perpetrator, Andreas M., had written That's exactly why I voted for AFD, everything for Germany, and comment in July of last year. Well, there's a problem because you had a fascist party in Europe that had a series of slogans, and every time somebody uses that same slogan, they're immediately being called racist. But, everybody ignores the fact that Mein Kampf is still the number one bestseller in Pakistan. And you have immigrants from there, and they kind of espouse the same things without saying this. They're all like, "All for Islam." Well, that's okay. That's okay to say. But Germany for the Germans? Can't be having that. In fact, can't have that anywhere. Canada for Canadians? Can't happen. America for Americans? Oh, apparently that's happening now. Toronto mortgage delinquencies have tripled, highest in over a decade, as was predicted. As was predicted before this election. Hashtag elbows up, everybody. Toronto real estate is finding out it's not invincible after all. New Equifax data reveals Toronto's CMA mortgage delinquency rates surged in the first quarter of 2025. While rising delinquencies are a national story, this is very different from the normalization seen in other Canadian markets. For the past few years, Toronto's delinquency rate has more than tripled and reached a multi-decade high. ABCF says, but Toronto's a third world dumpster. Surely that counts for something. Yes, it does. It counts for the fact that people are still slowly leaving Toronto after finding out how much of a dumpster that it is. Canadian trips back from the US plummet again amid trade war, stats can. Oh my God, Canadians are stupid. Canadians are dumb. Well, not people watching this broadcast, but Canadians are stupid. They just their brains are broken. They have this fear-based reaction, and they're like a bunch of puppets on strings for the liberals. And they react this way, react that way. This is a crisis. I'm like, oh, I'm scared. I got to do this. Canadian trips back to well, aside from the fact that the liberals have completely destroyed the economy, and nobody can afford to really do anything, let alone go on a holiday and limit their trips and find out where they're going to spend their money. So, of course, just for that, that would have reduced the traffic. But this thing here, StatsCan saying that it's because of a trade war. I'm sure they talked to a few people, and you still hear the Trump derangement syndrome on the street today, as if it's always a distraction to distract from the destruction that the liberals do, and then people will be told, "Oh, be afraid of something else." For the sixth straight month, Canadians are taking fewer trips in the United States compared to last year, according to the latest data. I think for the sixth straight month in Canada, the economy continues to spiral down and we continue to lose jobs every month, don't we? The new data also shows that many are considering alternative destinations as the trade war continues to surge, sour the sentiment of some travelers. Well, I do know that a lot of people have considered leaving Canada. Was it over close to 28,000 so far this year? And I mean, they've taken hundreds of billions of dollars of wealth with them over the past 5 years, especially over the last 10 years since the Liberals came to power, because they knew what a hellhole Canada would become with them spend, tax more, spend some more. And then when you run out of money, oh, I think we need to tax some more, which is what they're about ready to do, people. That's right. Consumption tax. We have to spend more money because they can't stop spending. People have little money to spend on frivolities in Canada, and with the exchange rate, any trip to the US can be prohibitive. This article notes the steep decline in Canadian tourists to Vegas, high prices, and the boycotts are cited. Yep, just like I was saying, Viva Las Vegas, tourists shun city over ridiculous prices. Well, I guess it is pretty expensive. Visitor numbers slumped 6.5% compared to 2024. One tourist from the UK told of her shock at paying $33 for a coffee and bagel. Wow, well, that's almost UK prices, isn't it? I mean, I know things are pretty expensive in the UK. Well, yeah. I've heard some pretty horror stories about having to stay in Vegas. If you're trying to stay off the strip at a less expensive place, you're probably not going to save any money. No visas for foreigners who hate us. America finally decided to take its own side in the fight for civilization by canceling the concert tour visa for a ridiculous British punk slash rap duo called Bob Vylan. What? It's like Bob Dylan, except it's villain, which sounds like villain. That's the cleverest thing about them. They are basically Milli Vanilli with tattoos, worse music, and less originality. Though, having heard snippets of their god-awful racket, if I were them, I'd cop to plagiarism, like, oh, sorry, Milli Vanilli, rather than take the blame for creating the sonic atrocities they call songs. It's bad enough for metal rap, with lots of shrieking about how they want to kill Jews. Among other things, Wikipedia describes their oeuvre d'asile. Bob Dylan merges elements of punk, hip hop, grime, and hardcore, and features criticisms of the British establishment, inequality, racism, sexism, and homophobia. It sounds bad enough that you can probably get Harvard class credit just for listening to it. That's funny. Well, small nation with small nationalisms remake Europe. The continent's frontiers are never fixed. San Candido is Italy, if only someone would tell the locals. Even before you arrive past Needle Peaks and pine trees, you'll notice the road signs Inishin definitely above S. Candido, almost a nickname below. Once you reach the center, the houses are all alpine shutters, and the villagers cry Grüß Gott, God bless, or hello. In the cafes, you can sip on schnapps or gorge on strudels the size of your fist. Spend long enough here, where Italy nuzzles Austria, and even the cows seem to moo for the Mitteleurope. Well, I don't think I'll ever get back to Europe. Critical mistake. Former Grit ministers call out what they say is Carney's capitulation to Trump. Well, it's obvious. Everyone's going to capitulate to their largest trading partner. Where about a mouse next to the elephant? After promising to be a truculent foil to the Trump administration during the spring federal election, Prime Minister Mark Carney now faces questions about whether his rhetoric matches reality. Rescinding the digital services tax is the latest conciliatory gesture that Carney has made to United States President Donald Trump. The American president had previously suspended trade talks over compliments about the DST. The two sides agreed to return the negotiation tables afterwards. Oh, that's nice. Knee pads down. The digital services tax was basically enforcing what the liberals have been wanting to do the entire time, which is to tax all of Canada using any kind of digital platform, making any kind of money digitally so that they can steal that from you and then give it to their preferred mainstream media cronies so that they can continue to publish the propaganda and the message that the government needs to have out there to control the populace. So tax the populace so you can control the populace. That was the entire purpose of the digital services tax. Of course, like every tax that happens in a federal government, it all goes into one big pot, and then after a while they just go crazy. Oh, look at all the money, fucking dollar signs go around in their eyeballs, and then they start sending money overseas, like $30 billion for gender net zero climate bullshit. Or now again, just recently, where they spent another 20 some $million in Latvia, Moldova was it? That to help again, gender, female crisis, bathroom. I don't care. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's net zero climate bullshit. And it's money leaving Canada while what's happening in Canada? People losing their homes, people living on the streets, people going to the food banks, people skipping meals, getting worse and worse every year. GDP now tanked, where actually our economy is shrinking. It's not growing. So what do we do? Oh, we complain about we had to cave into the digital services tax. We're losing our freedom. All of it, all of it. The roots of leftist rage. Unmoored from power and panicked by Trump's momentum, the left lashes out from Congress to campus to the streets with rage born of fear and fading influence. Across the political left, the orthodox Democrats to Antifa in the streets, the opposition to Trump has lost its collective mind. Yes, they have. House Minority Leader and now self-styled tough guy, Representative Hakeem Jeffries poses with a baseball bat to show how dangerous he is in opposing Trump's budget bill. Performative. Performative. Jeffries harangued Congress for 8 hours. Senator Cory Booker went on for 25, both to no effect. And what's this post here from Libs of TikTok? OMG. Tom Homan reveals that there are at least 600,000 known illegal aliens with criminal records who are freely roaming our country right now. They also have 2 million known gotaways who came in under Biden. The real numbers are much higher because these are the only known cases. Yep, that's why I don't know if they're going to be able to clean that up before the next election. But at least they're trying. At least they're trying to get their country back from the crazy cultural Marxists who's, just like they're doing in Canada, through mass immigration, completely dilute and destroy the existing culture, which is why they've been completely trying to destroy everything about the culture. He who controls the past controls the future, controls the present. The prevalence of real and fake women in Antifa terrorism. Of course. And they say adhering to gender instead of sex or transitioning is not a mental disorder. Yet apparently they seem to all have a violent angle to them. There's something unusual and interesting about the perpetrators of the attack on the ICE detention center in Texas. 4 of the 10 attackers were women. Other 2 were trans women. The large number of real women in a violent military-style attack is eerily reminiscent of the infamous Brader Meinhof gang, while the sexually confused men give the whole thing a modern transgender twist. Yeah, it's the sicko gang. Philip Cross, boycotting the U.S. has had little effect so far, but the CBC says it's going gangbusters with the elbows up crowd. Yeah, I wish we could just stop funding this propaganda we call the Criminal Broadcasting Corporation. In response to President Donald Trump's tariffs on our exports and musings about Canada becoming the 51st state, Canadians have enthusiastically embraced not visiting the United States and boycotting American products. An Ipsos poll done just before Canada Day found 75% of Canadians intend to avoid the U.S. when traveling, while 72% are purchasing fewer American goods. In May, the share of Canadian exports going to the U.S. fell 68.3%, one of the lowest proportions on record. Thank you, Liberals. Well, while our actions have clearly affected several U.S. sectors and regions, the overall impact of the U.S. economy has been minimal and therefore cannot be expected to change Trump's behavior. We need a different strategy. Yeah, your strategy should be to placate big guy on the block. You don't need to convince Canadians. You need to convince Trump. Because if you can't convince the United States that you're doing what they want you to do in order to get better trade negotiations, then you're not going to get better trade negotiations. I, it's just performance, just constantly trying to sell a narrative when in the end they are going to have to get down on a knee and say, "What do you want me to do, Daddy?" Because we do not have a position of strength. After 10 years of destruction by the Liberals, Canada is nothing but a weak shell of its former self, ready to be squashed by anyone who comes along. The CBC, the U.S. boycott remains strong while Canadians are digging in their heels. Canadians are not digging in their heels. This Canadian digs in the dirt in his backyard to make extra food for himself. Canadians are digging deep into their pockets to see if they have enough money to actually have more than 2 meals per day. People don't really care about this. The only ones that are digging in their heels or following the boycott are all the same morons that voted for the Liberals, the ones that are all doing the chicken dance and showing up their elbows. All right. It's shaping up to be a record sales year at the Maker House in Ottawa gift shop, where almost everything in the store, from furniture to food to greeting cards, is entirely made in Canada. Hot sellers these days include a t-shirt with the newly iconic Elbows Up slogan and chocolate bars wrapped in quintessential Canadian expressions such as "Hey." Yeah, we've seen these. These are not selling. Was the CBC putting out propaganda to help them sell stuff that's not moving off the shelf? Founder Gareth Davies says Year-over-year sales have surged 150% in February when U.S. Donald Trump first announced plans to impose tariffs on Canadian goods and ramped up his threats to make Canada the 51st state. And was BCF say, I bet CBC staffers invested. I bet so. So this in Ottawa, right, where they're about ready to lose probably 26,000 public service jobs. Well, they're not all in Ottawa, but a good portion of them are. So I wonder how busy his gift shop is going to be from all those people who no longer have a job in the government. Video of sobbing and bloodied female police officer after she was attacked by Manchester airport suspect is shown to court. The moment a female officer was left sobbing and bleeding after being punched in the face during a brawl at Manchester airport was shown today in court. Constable Lydia Ward told of being terrified after coming under attack as new police footage of the incident was entered in evidence. She was one of three officers who went to arrest Mohammed Fahir Amaz at Terminal 2 last July. And this post here, this video of PC Lydia Ward after being punched at Manchester airport raises serious questions regarding women being frontline police officers. Yes, it was a violent and despicable attack, but doesn't this highlight major flaws in policing abilities? Yes. I remember when I was in high school, first started high school in the late 70s into the early 80s. But in the early 70s, you're in high school and you're thinking, well, what am I going to do with my life? When I finish school, I'm going to need a job, and as part of this, my high school in northern Quebec, very small high school because we were in Quebec, we had uh, we would have like job fair people come through the school and just show up at a class. It goes, hey, this is what our job does. And in the future, so along the way, of course, RCMP showed up. Hey, if you want to be in the RCMP, well, I'm sorry, but we have a height requirement. Yeah, they had a height requirement in the RCMP because they knew that being a cop meant that you needed to have a certain level of physical force. And no matter how strong you are, if you don't have the weight behind you, the bad guy who's bigger is going to pick you up and throw you away. And that's why cops needed to be a certain size. And I'm sorry to say, but women in positions like this who can't protect themselves are now going to be a hindrance to the other co-workers because now they have to look out for them. And that's why women were never a good idea in combat. They're fine for rear echelon positions, but normal men, have an inherent need to protect women around them. It's in our genetics, right? Because the women need protection. The women naturally are physically a weaker sex, only physically, right? Don't get me wrong. Women run the world, whether men like it or not. Because you think you're running the men? Yeah, sorry, you think you're running the world, men? Yeah. And you have a woman in your life? Just go to sleep. Eventually, you're going to have to sleep. Women run the household. Women make the other half of our reality. Women make babies. They create. They create the human species. They need protection. They shouldn't be out in the front lines trying to stop somebody with their face. Oh yeah, quite the shot there. Well, look at that, eh? Nice left hook. Manchester Airport brawl from last year. Okay, so Islamic identity politics is taking hold of Europe. Uh, I'm pretty sure this happened probably 15 years ago. What, I guess never too late to the party. Fueled by Islamists and their progressive enablers, sectarianism is creeping into the mainstream. Across Europe, a new kind of politics is taking root. It is sectarian, identitarian, and increasingly shaped by the demands of Islamist interest groups cloaked in the demands of progressivism and tolerance. Yes, it's the Red Green Alliance, the alliance between the communists and the Islamists. And they will get along and they will destroy the society so that, and the Islamists are doing it because they want to take over. They always have a long-term plan. It's in their dawa. They need to do it. And meanwhile, the communists are only have a short-term memory like a fish, right? Because they have no morals. They think with their crotch. They think about 5 seconds ahead to get something and then wait for the next current thing to latch onto and then off they go. They're not the smartest people around. which is why they ally themselves with the very same people that will destroy them in the end. A new type of politics is taking root, sectarianism. Did you forget the lessons of Yugoslavia? Yugoslavia, a nation that had three very distinct cultures in there. And through the force of communism, they forced them all to live together for 3 generations. And they basically told them, if you don't follow the government edict of everybody getting along, we'll make you and your whole family disappear. And it worked. It worked for 3 generations until finally Yugoslavia ran out of money. They were given everything free to everybody, but had no industry other than manufacturing really bad cars that rusted into nothingness after about 2 years because they couldn't get because they had poor manufacturing capabilities, typical communism. And with no industry, no money, the entire nation collapsed and then into sectarian violence. Now, that sectarian violence was already there beforehand. They just squashed it, but never fixed it through fear. Meanwhile, here we have a warning. Oh, there might be sectarian violence. Yeah, because you inundated your entire continent with people that are not compatible with your values. And then you blame the people that were already there, like you're doing in Germany, putting people in jail for saying Germany for Germans. And now you're saying, oh, there might be some violence. What did we do wrong? Sweden is case in point. Jamal al-Haj, a Lebanese-born Swedish politician, was expelled from the Social Democrat Party last year after it was revealed he had intervened in an asylum case on behalf of fundamentalist imam back in 2017. He had also previously attended a conference in Malmo in the spring of 2023 that had connections to Hamas, the Islamist terrorist group and perpetrators of the October 7th pogrom in southern Israel later that year. I remember before I went to Afghanistan in the late 2000s that it was not unheard of for ambulances and fire trucks to have grenades tossed at them and gunfire if they responded to situations in Sweden. This is how long it's been going on in Sweden. I think recently they're starting to wake up to the problem. But beforehand, everybody that tried to warn them about what was happening, well, what happened to them? Yeah, they were canceled. And of course, they were called racist. And here we are at the bottom of the page. And well, we were going for half an hour, except for the first 3 minutes that I didn't have my mic on. I usually check that ahead of time. Well, if you hung out to the end, I'm very appreciative. If you're watching us on Rumble, please give us a follow. If you're watching us on CommuTube, I have no idea why you should be on Rumble, but if you are there, please give us a like. Please subscribe. Please leave us a comment. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And my other channel is quite busy. We are making a lot of food. There's going to be another video coming out on canning some zucchini pickles. I gotta go make some jam now. Fifth batch. Fifth batch. Where's the fourth? There's the fourth batch right there. Fifth batch is coming up. All right, we'll see you next week. Thanks for coming out. Bye bye.